What's up everyone, welcome to the channel, and today I'm going to give you my full card predictions and betting breakdown for UFC Fight Night Walker versus Ankalaev. Starting out the early prelims, we have Joshua Van versus Felipe Bunes. I'm going with Joshua Van here. I think he gets it done by decision. Felipe Bunes is dangerous, very dangerous on the ground, has some pretty nice submissions, but overall is not the greatest wrestler. Joshua Van, I believe, is a very solid striker. I love how he targets the body, has a very boxing heavy approach. Pretty solid chin. If he gets hit with the big shot like we saw in the Kevin Borjas fight, he has some pretty solid chin recovery. Is very durable, very tough, and after he got dropped in round 1 and lost that round, he came back in rounds 2 and 3 and did win that fight. And he targeted the body a lot, which is something that I wish a lot of fighters would do more. Felipe Bunes, I don't think he has the best striking. I've watched some of his fights and been a little bit unimpressed on the feet. Overall, I don't think he has the wrestling to take Joshua Van down, but if it does hit the ground, he can absolutely end up submitting Joshua Van because we haven't seen too much out of the submission game from Joshua Van. But Joshua Van is a prospect that I really do like. He is only 22 years old, so there may be some immaturity to his game. But overall, I think I can trust him here, and I think he wins unanimous decision 30-27 with a very strong round 3 because he has some very solid cardio. Moving on to the next fight of the card, we have Tom Nolan versus Nikolas Motta. I don't think this fight gets past one round. Look, Nikolas Motta, he has some submissions to his name. He has some wrestling. Overall, his grappling isn't too great. He should have gotten some in his last fight against Trey Ogden, but the ref really made a big mistake there. Thought Nikolas Motta was out, and that wasn't the case. So Trey Ogden didn't end up getting his win bonus just because the ref made a massive mistake when Trey Ogden was clearly up 2-0, but the judges made another dumb mistake and thought that it should have been 1-1 in the scorecards. So that ended up being a no contest. Anyways, I'm petitioning to give Trey Ogden his win bonus from his last fight. It still needs to happen. That guy got screwed. Anyways, with that being said, Nikolas Motta got knocked out brutally by, it was an elbow. Manuel Torres was the guy. And then Jim Miller also knocked him out. Look, Nikolas Motta doesn't have the greatest chin. Tom Nolan has great power. He has an insane frame for the division. I think he's 6'3", with a bigger reach than Jalen Turner. He's so powerful. Honestly, he is so damn powerful. He's very skinny. Man, he does strike me as a guy that probably doesn't have the greatest takedown defense, and he is very young. I think he's 24 years old, so there probably is some immaturity to his game as well. But I do think I can trust his knockout power against a guy like Nikolas Motta, who doesn't have the greatest chin. And I really do love his range, and I love how athletic this guy is. He moves pretty quickly, but if he misses, he's open to getting countered. He can get cooked in the brawling exchanges. Nikolas Motta can find a big shot here, but I don't think this one gets past one unless Nikolas Motta tries to turn into a wet blanket. But he might because this is his last fight if he ends up losing in the UFC. But yeah, Tom Nolan is the pick. I think he gets it done by round 1 KO. I do believe in this guy. He's got all the athletic tools so damn long in there. It's going to be really weird seeing these two face off and square off in the octagon because of the size differential here. But Tom Nolan, great power. I think he finds the KO in round 1 unless he has a massive hole in his grappling game or gets caught overextending. So moving on to the next fight of the card, we have Westin Wilson versus Jean Silva. I'm going with Jean Silva. Westin Wilson is big for the division, if I remember correctly. I mean, he's a pretty big, lengthy guy who has some very solid submissions, but he probably doesn't have the takedowns needed to get Jean Silva down to the ground. And even if that is the case, Jean Silva does have some pretty solid submissions. I was looking through his career. He has a couple submissions. I'm not too, fluent when it comes to just knowing Jean Silva's background when it comes to his grappling. But I have seen him stuff some takedowns. He has shown a pretty decent all-around game. And when it comes to the feet, is he perfect? No, but he can eat a big shot. And he has some nice power in his hands. And Westin Wilson just got knocked out against Joanderson Brito, who is a very good fighter, a very solid prospect in the featherweight division. But I do think Jean Silva has the power to get this one done. I think the odds are crazy. Jean Silva may struggle with a guy like Westin Wilson, who has a pretty unique style on the feet and is a super rangy guy. That could bring problems to him. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Jean Silva will walk him down and find a KO in the first couple of rounds. He's got some decent cardio, but he's a dog. That's what I like about Jean Silva. He's a lot of fun to watch. I will be cheering for him. This guy does showboat a lot, but he does make his fights very, very entertaining. I'm cheering for him here, but don't be surprised if Westin Wilson can potentially get this fight down to the ground, find a submission, or even just disrupt Jean Silva with his range. I did a video of my top 10 favorite prospects coming off of the Dana White's Contender Series, and he did not make the top 10. So I don't know why he is such a massive favorite here. He is super hittable. Westin Wilson has opportunity here, but overall, I do think Jean Silva has the tools to get this one done. Round 1 or 2 KO here. Moving on to the next fight of the card, we have Farid Basharat versus Taylor Lapilus. I'm going with Farid Basharat. I think Taylor Lapilus is the better striker, but he still has holes in his takedown defense. We saw that in his most recent fight against Kaulin Lachrin. I hope I said that correctly. But anyways, Farid Basharat's a pretty well-rounded guy. He has some pretty solid striking. He's got some pretty solid takedowns, and he's got some nice submissions. He's a very well-rounded guy. I don't think he's brilliant anywhere. He doesn't have the greatest athletic tools. He has some nice cardio. Yeah, I just trust him. He's a very well-rounded guy. If Kaulin is taking Taylor Lapilus down, I do trust Farid Basharat to be able to do the same thing. I think this isn't going to be a very fun fight. I think Farid Basharat will take him down and ride him out to a decision. But Taylor probably is the better striker here, and if he can stuff the takedowns from Farid Basharat, I do think he will win this fight. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I'm pretty confident that Farid will find the takedowns here, but I could be wrong. And maybe Farid just shows us that his striking is better than we ever imagined and wins this fight on the feet. We'll see. But Farid Basharat, 30-27 decision is going to be the pick. Moving on to the next fight of the card, we have McGhee versus Gaston Bolanos. I think a lot of people are ruling out Gaston Bolanos here, and I can understand why. He got taken down 3 times against Aaron Phillips, and McGhee is a super athletic guy who's going to muscle his way into the takedowns if he tries to, and he has some solid submissions as well. I do think he will get the submission here. I think it'll probably take a round or 2, but I think on the feet, if Gaston Bolanos is able to keep it on the feet by stuffing the takedowns or continuing to scramble back up to the feet after he's taken down, popping back up to his feet, whatever it might be, if he keeps it on the feet, I think he is the better striker. Whoa, that was a spaz. He has had a lot of success on the feet in Muay Thai, in kickboxing, in MMA as well. He is a very solid striker, in my opinion. He targets the calf very well, has some nice power to his hands. Is he a perfect striker? No. Can McGhee land a big shot, especially with this takedown threat? He can. McGhee is super athletic, and I can see him potentially finding a big shot on the feet, but ultimately, I do think after he feels a couple of calf kicks from Gaston Bolanos, he's going to be shooting takedowns. I think Gaston Bolanos, maybe he was a champion nationally in Muay Thai or kickboxing. Don't take my word for that. I'm not entirely sure, but I know that he was on Joe Rogan multiple times, and I do know that he has some solid striking. I've seen it in Bellator. I've watched a couple of highlights of this guy. He's got solid striking. He's got some solid power. Don't be surprised. Well, I guess you probably should be surprised because I am telling you I'm picking McGhee. But don't rule it out that he can't knock out McGhee if he stuffs the takedowns or keep the fight on the feet, or McGhee is entertaining the stand-up a little bit too much. But ultimately, McGhee, super physically imposing. Geez, I'm struggling with my words right now. But he's very big, very strong, and I do see him finding the takedowns if he wants to, and I think he'll do better than Aaron Phillips in controlling him and having more success with potentially damaging or submission attempts on the ground against a guy like Gaston Bolanos. So round 2, submission by McGhee. I like Gaston Bolanos, though. I do hope that, he has success in his career and can develop some solid takedown defense because he has a pretty fun striking style with some nice power. Let's move on to the next fight here, which is Matheus Semelsberger versus Preston Parsons. I love Matheus Semelsberger. He's randomly one of those guys in the prelims that I love because he's got a lot of great power. He's rangy, and he's fun while it's on the feet. But his takedown defense sucks. And Preston Parsons has some solid takedowns. Recently, he actually lost to Trevin Giles. And then before that, he beat Evan Elder. And I know Trevin Giles isn't that great. He does have some solid takedown defense. But ultimately, I don't see Matheus Semelsberger being able to stuff the takedowns from, what's his name? I almost said Matthew Parsons. Preston Parsons. And something I like about Preston Parsons in this matchup is he's not a guy that's going to entertain the stand-up. He's not going to, go tit for tat for Matheus Semelsberger. What he's going to do is he's going to shoot takedowns early on in the round, and I think he finds them pretty easily. I think he knows Matheus Semelsberger is purely a striker that has had a lot of troubles in his career with his takedown defense. We've seen Matheus Semelsberger taken down multiple times by Jeremiah Wells, and once he's taken down, he's not very good at getting back up to his feet. Uros Medic landed a takedown on him. We could keep going through his career of him getting taken down. AJ Fletcher comes to mind. Other fighters as well. With that being said, I think Preston Parsons wastes no time in every single one of the first, second, and third rounds, and he'll go for the takedowns early, and he'll find the takedowns. Against Trevin Giles and Evan Elder, in every single one of the rounds, at the start of the round, he shot a takedown early. All 6 of the rounds, because it was 3-round fights. All 6 of the rounds, he shot takedowns early. I think he shoots takedowns early here, and he finds them. And it will be a very boring Preston Parsons decision. But don't rule out Matthew Semelsberger because he is so athletic. One of the more powerful guys in the welterweight division. He is very big. He is very rangy. He can get this one done, but ultimately I'm going to trust the wrestling and the pressure from Preston Parsons. Moving on to the next fight of the card, we have Andrei Arlovski versus Waldo Cortes-Acosta. I'm going to go with Waldo Cortes-Acosta. Look, if you're getting KO'd by Don'Tale Mayes, I'm not going to trust you against Waldo Cortes-Acosta. I think Waldo has some decent power, and he's not one of the least athletic heavyweights. You understand what I'm saying? He's not very athletic. Like, obviously, the guys at the top are much more athletic than Waldo, but Waldo has some decent power. I mean, he was in the MLB, if I remember correctly. A pitcher, something like that. But essentially, he's got a pretty solid straight right. And, yeah, I mean, his striking defense sucks. It's really hard to give props to Waldo Cortes-Acosta because I'm not really impressed by his technique. Now he's decently athletic. He can take a decent shot. And, yeah, I think he's good enough at this point in his career to knock out a guy in Andrei Arlovski, who just got knocked out by Don'Tale Mayes, who sucks. And then before that, he got submitted by Marcos Rogerio de Lima in the first round. At this point in his career, he's decomposing, he's decaying, he's 44 years old. I love Andrei, he's a pretty cool guy, but I do think that we will see Waldo Cortes-Acosta land a pretty big shot here early and finish the fight. But Andrei Arlovski may have the better gas tank. If Waldo blows his load, maybe we see Andrei Arlovski pull out some magic. But ultimately, Waldo Cortes-Acosta is the pick here. He's younger, more explosive, maybe not more technical, but Andrei Arlovski is slow. He is not what he used to be. Waldo's the pick. Round 1 KO. Moving on to the next fight of the card. Phil Hawes versus Brunno Ferreira. This has been the hardest fight on the entire card for me to pick. Right before I was filming this video, I was hyped. I was like, Brunno Ferreira is going to get this one done. Ferreira, I think that's how you pronounce it. Brunno Ferreira is going to get this done. He knocked out Gregory Rodriguez. He has some very solid power. And outside of his last fight, he was undefeated, knocking out damn near everybody in the first round. And Phil Hawes gets knocked out a lot in the first round. But Phil Hawes is the better fighter. That's what everyone is going to tell you here. He is the better striker. He is the better wrestler. When it comes to a submission game, maybe not. Brunno Ferreira's submission game is kind of unknown as of now because he just finishes people on the fight or in the first round on the feet. More than likely, that's how he's going to win if he's finishing fights. So Brunno Ferreira is going to be the pick. He's the worst striker, and he can get taken down. And by the way, I want to say this much. I might flip my pick here. I'm going to be very curious to see what Phil Hawes says if he has an interview this week. If he's saying he's going to work in the grappling, go with the wrestle-heavy game plan, I'm picking Phil Hawes because he is a national wrestling level kind of guy. Was he on the national wrestling team? Something like that. He's got very high-level wrestling, and I do think he can take down Brunno Ferreira if he wants to. I just think he might entertain the stand-up, and I think if he entertains the stand-up, Brunno Ferreira will land a big shot. Similarly to how he did against Gregory Rodriguez, Phil Hawes pressuring in, having success on the feet, and that's going to give him too much confidence, and then Brunno Ferreira is going to land a big shot. I know Brunno just got knocked out by Nursultan Ruzabayev, but that guy is a killer. I think he's coming off like a 6 or 7 fight winning streak going into the Brunno Ferreira fight, and he's got some very great power and has a very, very rangy frame that was really hard for Brunno Ferreira, who is a smaller guy in the division, or at least not a rangy guy in the division, to deal with. And he got knocked down in the first round. I know people have said, oh, well, Brunno Ferreira, because people will just check the stats. If you check the stats, not people are saying this. If you check the stats, Brunno Ferreira got taken down by Nursultan, but that was not the case, because Nursultan kind of knocked him down after catching his legs, similarly to how Brian Ortega did against Alexander Volkanovski before going for the chokes. It wasn't a real takedown. It was kind of like he knocked him out from that position, and then he fell, so they called it a takedown. So far, we haven't seen Brunno get taken down. But what he has done is shot in on a takedown against Gregory Rodriguez and then had his back taken. But then from there, he showed a nice scramble back up to his feet. So that leads me to think that he may have the scrambles to get it back up to the feet against a guy like Phil Hawes. And when it's on the feet, I think he finds the big shot because he took some decent shots from Gregory Rodriguez. He doesn't have a glass chin. I don't like the fact that he's coming off a knockout, but yeah, man, I don't know if I can trust Phil Hawes. I might flip my pick. If I do, I'll tell you down in the comments below. But yeah, if I'm Phil Hawes, I'm realizing if I lose this fight, I'm getting cut. My fighting career's over, and I will be jobless unless I go and fight at some other crappy organization that's going to pay me $2,000. So I would go with the wrestle-heavy game plan from the start. But the issue I have with Phil Hawes, and the reason why I haven't swayed my pick this far, is because sometimes it takes him like a minute or a minute and a half to shoot a takedown. He's not going out there like Preston Parsons is. That's the guy I was just talking about. But Preston Parsons goes out there and shoots takedowns early. And I can't trust Phil Hawes to do that when it's on the feet. I can't trust him anymore. He's the much better fighter. He is. And I might flip my pick, but right now, Brunno Ferreira is the pick. I think he finds a shot. Brunno Ferreira is also a very similar build to Chris Curtis, a very stocky guy, 5'10". Chris Curtis is 5'10", and I could see him landing a hook similarly to how Chris Curtis did. That's how it's going to go. Brunno Ferreira, round 1 KO is the pick, but I feel like I might be, and other people may be, underestimating Phil Hawes here. Yeah, moving on to the next fight of the card. We have Ricky Simón versus Mario Bautista. Going with Ricky Simón. I think Song Yadong is really good, and I know it wasn't the most impressive performance from Ricky Simón, but he's got great cardio. And Mario Bautista didn't impress me against, what's his name? Jeez. Damon Blackshear. Thank you. Damon Blackshear took him down 4 times. Damon Blackshear is a good wrestler, but I think Ricky Simón is better, and I think Ricky Simón may be better at holding him down, and if that is not the case, he will have better cardio and he will shoot non-stop takedowns. And Ricky Simón has great power on the feet. I think Mario Bautista is probably the better striker. He'll have the more volume here. He's got great submissions as well. Maybe he can find a submission on Ricky Simón, but overall, Ricky Simón is a pretty solid grappler with some very solid cardio. I can trust him to take down a guy like Mario Bautista. And when it's on the feet, I could see him finding a big shot, but Mario Bautista I do think is the better striker. He trains with Sean O'Malley, so that's something interesting to note. But I do think Ricky Simón has the cardio and the wrestling to get this one done. And it might not be super interesting, but Mario Bautista has a pretty solid ability to pop back up to the feet. So this one will be interesting. I'm not ruling out Mario Bautista. I mean, maybe he finds a KO somehow, but I do think Ricky Simón has a pretty solid chin. Song Yadong is just really good, has some solid takedown defense and some solid cardio as well. I'm not going to fault Ricky Simón too much for losing to Song Yadong, who's a guy that I really do believe in. But Mario has a style to get this one done. I'm going to say, I'm going to say 29-28/30-27. There will be some judges that are split. I think Ricky Simón will have 2 dominant rounds, but maybe one of the rounds Bautista does enough damage on the feet, potentially throws up a submission attempt that makes it kind of interesting on the scorecards. But ultimately, Ricky Simón by decision. Let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Jim Miller versus Gabriel Benítez. I'm going with Jim Miller over Gabriel Benítez. I think Jim Miller has been more active, is coming off a win over, oh my gosh, what's the guy's name? Give me 1 second to pull this up. I don't think it was a very good fighter he knocked out, but he knocked out Jesse Butler. There it is. Did he lose to Alexander Hernandez? Yes, but Alexander Hernandez is not a bad fighter. He's been active. Before that, he submitted Donald Cerrone. Jim Miller hasn't looked washed. He still moves correctly. Like, he's not decomposing as bad as Andrei Arlovski is, who we mentioned earlier on the card. I think Jim Miller will be able to find a big shot on the feet, and if it's not on the feet, I think he can find the takedowns, potentially find the submissions. However, Gabriel Benítez may be the better striker. He's got some very nice and powerful kicks, but he didn't really impress me in his last performance, which was over a year ago at UFC San Diego against Charlie Ontiveros. Charlie Ontiveros is not a good fighter, and he was landing too many punches on Gabriel Benítez, landed an axe kick, landed a couple of strikes. Not that Gabriel Benítez sucks, it's just I don't trust him that much against Jim Miller, who has nice power in his hands. I love that he is the grappling threat. I think he is more advanced in the grappling. I'm talking about Jim Miller, and can potentially find a submission. But Benítez has not been submitted throughout his career. I do think Jim Miller may find a big shot, like round 2-ish, something like that, maybe a takedown, have some nice ground and pound submissions. I see him finishing this fight in rounds 2 or 3, but Gabriel Benítez bringing some problems on the feet, throwing some kicks. I do think Jim Miller will find some takedowns through the kicks. I think Benítez might throw a body kick. Jim Miller will find a takedown off of that. I think Jim Miller has proven cardio, hasn't looked bad recently, has been more active, has some nice power, has some nice submissions, and he just feels destined to fight on UFC 300, so I don't want to see him getting knocked out here. But I'm not just going off of a feeling. I genuinely do think he will win this fight. I'm going to go with Jim Miller, round 2 KO. Yeah, potentially a TKO, something like that. Jim Miller, round 2 KO. Moving on to the next fight of the card. Matheus Nicolau versus Manel Kape. I'm going with Manel Kape. I think he's very good. I really do think he's very good. He's got a granite chin. He's improved a lot. So has Matheus Nicolau since their last fight. But I do think Manel Kape will stuff most of the takedowns, if not all of the takedowns from Matheus Nicolau. And when it is on the feet, I think he's the better striker. He has developed very solid counter-striking. I love his granite chin. And he has been targeting the body a lot more recently in his career, which I do love from him. I think that could serve him a lot of success in this fight. I do think that he stuffs the takedowns, starts succeeding a little bit more off the back foot than he did in the last fight. I think he can potentially find a big shot. We're going with a round 3 KO or 2. Round 2 or 3 KO. I do think Matheus Nicolau is well-rounded. He has some solid submissions, some decent wrestling, some solid wrestling, I'll say that much, some solid striking as well. But he's coming off a knockout loss to Brandon Royval. And I don't like the fact that you're coming off a knockout loss against Manel Kape, who has a very, very solid amount of power and athleticism to his game. So I do think, yeah, Manel Kape wins this one. I think he's improved a little bit more. I do like that he's in his prime. How old is Matheus Nicolau? I think he's actually like around 30 as well, right? Let me double check this. Matheus Nicolau is, my guess is 31. He is 32. No, he's 31. There you go. So they're both in their primes. I don't think Matheus Nicolau is that bad, but in my opinion, he hasn't really beaten anyone outside of Manel Kape in his early days that great. Matt Schnell, not that good of a fighter. David Dvorak, not that good of a fighter. Tim Elliott, he's cool. He's solid. But even then, Manel Kape, I love his ability off the back foot. I think his southpaw stance makes it really awkward for a lot of fighters. I can't stress this enough. I love that he's targeting it to the body, his striking to the body a lot more. And I think he is constantly improving. And he's got a granite chin, and I think he'll stop the takedowns. Yeah, Manel Kape, round 2 or 3 KO. I could see decision as well, but I think he makes it look a lot more convincing than the last fight, and he will probably get the title shot next, seeing that Brandon Moreno has already fought Alejandro Pantoja 3 times, and even if he beats Amir Albazi, I think they're going to do Manel Kape versus Alejandro Pantoja, and then the winner of that will face the winner of Amir Albazi versus Brandon Moreno. Moving on to Johnny Walker versus Magomed Ankalaev. I'm going to go with Magomed Ankalaev here. I think a lot of people are looking at Johnny Walker and seeing how athletic and how powerful he is, and they're just immediately thinking, hey, Magomed Ankalaev has gotten hurt by Thiago Santos. That flying knee that Johnny Walker threw almost landed against Magomed Ankalaev. And he was landing some nice leg kicks on Magomed Ankalaev and immediately thinking Johnny Walker will find the finish here. But I don't think that will be the case. I think Magomed Ankalaev is going to go out there, and now he's just gone from the mindset of, I want to find the knockout here, to just give me the win. It's 5 rounds. I can find the knockout at any point. During these 5 rounds, I'm going to go and shoot in on the takedowns. And I think he's going to shoot takedowns early. And I think from there, that's going to make it very hard for Johnny Walker on the feet. And there's going to be a massive takedown threat. And that's just going to ultimately alter his game plan a lot. I think he might be a little bit more hesitant to throw leg kicks after that, simply because he might be concerned that Magomed Ankalaev finds takedowns off of that. And just let's look at Johnny Walker's recent performances against Anthony Smith. He had him crippled, hobbling on one leg, and couldn't finish him. If I'm going to pick Johnny Walker against Magomed Ankalaev, I want to see him going out there and finishing Anthony Smith. Before that, I'm going to get it all mixed up chronologically, but he fought Ion Cutelaba, Paul Craig. I think Paul Craig was a very easy style matchup for him. He was meant to beat Paul Craig. I picked him against Paul Craig. Ion Cutelaba, that was a pretty easy stylistic matchup for him in hindsight as well. Look, I think Johnny Walker doesn't have the greatest chin, but that's not the reason why I'm picking against him. I just think he's not going to be able to stuff the takedowns coming his way. And we've seen Nikita Krylov land, I think it was 3 of 3 takedowns, maybe 3 or 4 takedowns against Johnny Walker, something like that. And when he took him down, he controlled him with ease. I think Magomed Ankalaev can very easily take this fight down to the ground, and he's not that bad of a striker. I know that Jan Blachowicz really did hurt his legs, and Johnny Walker crumpled Anthony Smith's legs, but that's Anthony Smith. Magomed Ankalaev is a better striker than Anthony Smith, and I do believe that he will find a KO. So at some point in this fight, in the later rounds, I'm feeling round 4. I think he's going to work in the takedown, land some nice ground and pound, and then with the takedown threat, he could potentially land a high kick, or maybe just get his hands going, find a KO on the feet. If he takes him down, maybe beats him up with ground and pound. I don't want to underestimate Magomed Ankalaev just because of the Jan Blachowicz performance and some of the other performances as well. Thiago Santos, because he does get hit and he can get hurt. What I do like about Magomed Ankalaev's chin is he has some pretty decent recovery. When he got dropped by Thiago Santos, he recovered pretty damn well. He's got some nice cardio. I think he trains with Eric Nixick. That's a pretty solid camp. I'm not going to pick against Magomed Ankalaev here. I think he's going to be improving too. Johnny Walker's chin's something that I still don't want to trust in, even though I do think it is a little bit overrated. Well, I guess that's not the way to say it. A little bit underrated. I think a lot of people are just saying any strike that lands will touch him and he'll go out. I mean, he got knocked out by Jamal Hill. Before that, oh geez, I'm forgetting everything right now. He's got KO'd a lot throughout his career, but for the most part, it's been by decently powerful guys. Magomed Ankalaev doesn't have dynamite in his hands, but he is pretty accurate and he can land a pretty solid shot. I do think you'll find a TKO at some point in this fight. And if he goes with a grapple-heavy game plan, he'll have no problem beating the crap out of Johnny Walker on the ground. Although Johnny Walker does have some pretty solid submissions and is the stronger guy, is very athletic, is more powerful, and Magomed Ankalaev does get hit, I don't think he's on the level of some of the other strikers that have had success against Magomed Ankalaev. Well, I think he's better than Thiago Santos. Well, he did lose to Thiago Santos. I don't even know about Johnny Walker, man. I think the calf kicks can find success, but I think he's got to find a big knock on the first couple of rounds. And as the fight goes later on, I do think that he will become figured out by Magomed Ankalaev. Kind of his unorthodox tricks may start to get figured out. I think if Johnny Walker gets it done, it has to be early. But I will say this much. He's got a good chance, especially for being a 5-1 underdog. I think that is crazy. I'm giving him like a 35% chance to beat Magomed Ankalaev because I could see Magomed Ankalaev going out here, not starting out the grapple-heavy game plan, and then just, entertaining the striking and walking into a big blow because it's possible. If Thiago Santos can hurt you, can sit you on your ass, can rock you, I think, multiple times, then I'm going to trust a guy like Johnny Walker too, potentially. But I strongly do think he's going to resort to the grappling. It just feels like it's going to happen. He's not that dumb. He's going to, the grappling worked in the first fight. He landed the first takedown he shot against Johnny Walker and then landed the illegal knee, which should have been a no contest win, or not a no contest win, a DQ win for Johnny Walker. So Johnny Walker arguably should get a title shot right now. I'm just kidding. But arguably, Johnny Walker should have won that fight. No, he should have, 100%. That's not arguable. What's his name? Magomed Ankalaev landed the illegal knee that led to the end of the fight, so Johnny Walker is one up on Magomed Ankalaev. So if Magomed Ankalaev goes out there and beats Johnny Walker, we're going to have to see a trilogy fight. I'm just kidding. I do think Magomed Ankalaev wins this fight and will get a title shot. And the reason why I am saying that is because Alex Pereira was already calling out Magomed Ankalaev for the title shot ahead of Jamal Hill. And right now, I do think Alex Pereira will beat Jamal Hill. I'm not entirely set on it, but as of now, I'm leaning towards Alex Pereira. I don't think Jamal Hill is going to look to grapple because he has said multiple times on his YouTube adamantly that he is not going to be shooting any takedowns against Alex Pereira as a point because he wants to prove all of Twitter wrong. He feels disrespected anyways. I do think Magomed Ankalaev will get a title shot, especially if he finishes Johnny Walker here because Alex Pereira will call him out if he beats Jamal Hill. And I do think he beats Alex Pereira. Now, obviously, we'll see how this fight goes, and that might change my perspective on Magomed Ankalaev. But for now, I think he's a very solid ability to get the fight down to the ground and hold fighters down. And I think Johnny Walker will fall victim to that, as we saw him do against Nikita Krylov. So ultimately, I think round 4 KO, Magomed Ankalaev. I'm giving him a 65% chance to beat Johnny Walker. Not completely ruling out Johnny Walker. I think Johnny Walker by finish is a very, very great bet. But I got to go with Magomed Ankalaev to cap off the first fight night of the entire year. Thank you guys so much for watching. That is going to conclude this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.